This week on Dine Drink CLE, the podcast.
When you go to Blossom, there are many restrictions for pop concerts, but when you see the orchestra, it's pretty much whatever you want. The only things not allowed are drones, pets, open grill flames, so nothing like that.
Named Cesar Cardini. He was an Italian immigrant in Mexico, and he owned this restaurant, and someone ordered a salad, and he didn't have all the ingredients, so he had these pantry items he threw together, and it ended up being the Caesar salad that now we eat all the time.
So Royal Docks Brewing Company started in Canton less than 10 years ago, doing a great job. They expanded slow and smart. They have a total of 3 locations, 2 in Canton.
Hi, I'm Alex Darus, and you're watching or listening to Dine Drink CLE, the podcast where we talk to Cleveland's best insiders, experts, and influencers about all things dining and drinking in the Northeast Ohio region. I am solo this week hosting the podcast. We're going to talk a little bit about Blossom Eats at Blossom Music Center, since it's the season for outdoor concerts, the 100th anniversary of the Caesar salad, and some new news in the brewery field. So first, we're joined by Marc Bona. Hi, Marc.
Hey, Alex.
Yeah, so Blossom Music Center, it's outdoor concert season. And I know Wolfe, our colleague, recently wrote a story about the offerings at Blossom. So what can you tell us a little bit about what people can eat there?
There's a lot. I mean, it's starting to remind me of Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse or the Progressive Field, where there's so many different offerings. And I really think at this point, Blossom approaches this like hotel restaurants. I like hotel restaurants because there's something for everyone. I mean, if you go into a place like this, you're going to find something that you like. So many different things there. So many different restaurants. Now, Live Nation runs the pop concerts that are there. And that's really what we're talking about. I mean, it's there all the time. But, you know, they have the Blossom Grill, which is right on site. So that's an actual restaurant. But a lot of other places. There's Art Bird, which is chicken. Trejo's Tacos, named after Danny Trejo, the actor. If you don't know who he is, Google him. He's got a very distinct look. Very popular tacos. There's burgers. There's nachos. There's soft serve. There's craft cocktails. I think the neat thing is places like this will do research and development, really, and a lot of feedback from people who go. They find out what's popular. They find out what isn't. And basically, a lot of times they'll keep the popular ones, toss out the ones that are not as popular, and then try new ones. This is a smart approach, I think, for people, and it seems to work out pretty well.
Especially because Blossom's so seasonal, too. It's like they could run something for the summer and then try something different next summer.
Right. You know, and that works out. So Trejo's, I remember doing a story years ago when Trejo's went in, and that clearly is a huge seller for them. They mentioned that to Paris, and she interviewed a few people and said that is clearly doing very well. So they've kept it. That's just smart, common sense business. But they have a couple of new ones. Coco's Bavarian, which I believe is sandwiches, they're trying something new there. They have a soft serve place, which is also new. Like you said, summertime, so you want ice cream. I like the diversity. I mean, these aren't crazy things because you can't get too crazy. Yeah. But they're things that kind of fit the seasonal vibe. And they're like I said about my analogy to hotel restaurants. You go into a hotel restaurant, you're going to find chicken and salads and pastas and steaks. And everything. You'll find something you like. So, you know, it's a pretty neat smorgasbord for the pop concert culinary offerings.
Yeah, and like you said, I think it's very similar to like the ballpark or something where you go and expect to get the hot dogs and the nachos, but it's a little bit elevated version of it. But I know outside of the pop concerts, you can do a little picnicking at Blossom, correct? So what can you tell us about that?
So what I can say is I would never describe myself as being an expert on anything. It's very rare. I'm a jack of all trades.
Not even beer?
Not even beer. I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. But this is one thing I can speak with some authority of. My wife and I are professional picnickers at Blossom. We've been going every year, multiple times a year during the summer, almost exclusively for orchestra concerts. And we've really done this right. So I've had a lot of trial and error, mostly successes. And luckily, I'm married to a wonderful cook. So the thing to know is, when you go to Blossom, there are many restrictions for pop concerts. But when you see the orchestra, It's pretty much whatever you want. The only things not allowed are drones, pets, open grill flames. So nothing like that, and just common sense things. But everything else is fair game. So for starters, when you pull in, we basically have a story online. I wrote about 28 tips, the smart things to know before you blossom and before you picnic at Blossom. And one of the things is when you pull in, you drive in, there are these tall light poles. Take 2 seconds to just glance at the light pole, letter designation, and take a photograph.
It is the worst when you forget your parking at Blossom.
You don't want to walk around, and especially at Blossom, because you're going to be with a wagon full of stuff, and that's the last thing that you want to do. Speaking of wagons, we use, among other things, a little red wagon that you would have for kids. I bought one a few years ago. I put it together. It's easy, and then I rust-proof the bottom, and it's a huge help. They also have coolers that are designed for picnics, and on rollers. We have one of those as well. We have a garden basket. I mean, there's so many different things you can bring, but it's really fun. The other thing is pay attention to the weather. For those who aren't really experienced with Blossom, which is in Cuyahoga Falls on Steele's Corners Road, that is a valley, and it has its own little mini micro weather pattern.
Yeah.
So when you get there, when the gates open several hours in advance, I always suggest getting there early, spending plenty of time to picnic. But it's really hot. You're going to want to be dressing for the weather, but always bring a hoodie. Even if you think it's just scorching out, bring a hoodie.
Yeah.
Late at night, late in summer, it can get really cool there. It's really amazing how much the temperature can dip.
Yeah.
And, things like what to drink, think of little things like if you're bringing a bottle of wine, bring a screw cap.
Yeah.
That helps. There's plenty of good
So
wines.
you can bring alcohol too, yes.
Oh, yeah. Definitely you can bring alcohol. If you bring beer, I would say you're going to be there for a few hours, and especially if you're driving, bring something lighter, bring sessionable beers. That's always a good word to look for on a craft label. Hard seltzers are around 5%. That's fairly low. Things like that. I wouldn't suggest anything overly alcoholic, especially in the heat. That's just not good anyway. Foods, really whatever you want, whatever can travel. My wife likes to oven fry chicken. It's not greasy. It's a little healthier. It's delicious. She makes caprese salads. And I just have a ton of different tips, little things to remember. There's little things like bring dryer sheets, stuff them in your socks or your shorts because they repel bugs.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So things like that. I mean, it's just.
Yeah, or I liked your tip of ice packs over ice because you always end up with a mess.
Right. It'll just be a puddle. Bring, recyclable bags. And the other thing is, this is Northeast Ohio, and one of the many blessings here, I've lived all over the country. We really don't have a big traffic problem here. Yes, we have some traffic jams. Yes, we have somewhat of rush hour, but you know what? Stay to the end. We're all going to get out of the parking lot, folks. You can put on some music and listen, but stay and give the orchestra the applause, the ovation that they deserve. They're one of the single best orchestras on the planet. They have been for many years. This is really a gem. Even someone like me I don't really know classical music. I just like to enjoy it in a picnic setting.
Yeah.
And that's fun. So all these little tips, and I've got a bunch of others online, it just makes the experience so much better.
Yeah, and I mean, it does turn like what would be maybe a regular classical music concert that someone might not think that they're into like dinner and a show, which I think a lot of people, especially who listen to our podcast, are into. It ends up being a whole experience for sure.
It really does. And you can also, the flip side of this is you can stop at a restaurant and get to go, which is fine. We prefer to bring our own foods and kind of control that. We almost always go with friends. Go early, stake out where you want to be. But you're right. It is an experience. And if you live in this area, you should try this just once. It's also a pretty affordable thing. I mean, I think lawn tickets are going for about $25. The other thing is, just to let people know, the people who are really into the music, they're in the pavilion. They can't picnic in the pavilion, so they picnic ahead of time. And then when they go in the pavilion, they just line the back row with all their coolers. So that's how you see all those. I've sat in the pavilion before for rock concerts. I prefer the lawn, generally speaking. especially for a picnic and going with friends. So it's a blast.
Yeah, it's like a beach kind of experience almost, but different. Yeah.
Without the water.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of going into, I guess, one good meal that might be good to bring on a picnic would be a Caesar salad. Oh. And this year, I don't know if you know, this is the 100th anniversary of the Caesar salad. It kind of has some interesting background, but your basic Caesar salad is romaine lettuce, dressing made out of anchovies, lemon, egg yolk, lots of Parmesan, and croutons. Like, people mix it up here and there, but that's kind of the basic. But a lot of people might not know that it was actually invented in Tijuana, Mexico. I mean, there's a lot of people debate about this, but there's Caesar's restaurant in Tijuana. They self-proclaim, like, they threw a huge party this year. I think it already happened for the 100th anniversary. But it was invented there by a guy named Cesar Cardini. He was an Italian immigrant in Mexico, and he owned this restaurant. And someone ordered a salad, and he didn't have all the ingredients, so he had these pantry items he threw together, and it ended up being the Caesar salad that now we eat all the time. And the original Caesar salad, too, it's supposed to, like, each leaf of lettuce you're supposed to individually dress. So sometimes you see restaurants do that. I know also at Caesar's in Tijuana, it's a big thing to do the tableside Caesar. So if you can't go to Mexico to eat the original, I feel like Northeast Ohio, there's a ton of great Caesar salad options. I think I wrote 18 online in a story, but even the tableside thing, if you want to experience that, I know Ken Stewart's Grill in Akron, they do the whole presentation of that. And it's kind of cool because they have to ground up the anchovies and everything's fresh, you know. Well, are you a Caesar salad fan, Marc?
I could live on Caesar salads. That could be, I could eat a Caesar salad every day for lunch. I never get tired of it. It's tangy, so it adds a little, like, zhuzhes it up a little bit, I guess you'd say. I absolutely love it. I'm a traditionalist. I love anchovies.
Okay, yeah.
On a Caesar salad. I don't eat them any other time, so maybe that's why I like them. They're just, I'm not a huge salt bomb person either, but they just add a little umami. So there's that extra level of flavor. Your list was really, really smart. Those were good places. I've eaten at a few of them. I also love places, and I'm trying to think now, I think Lanning's does this in Akron and a few others, where they actually make their own croutons. Mm-hmm. It's sometimes you get them, they're huge, they're warm, they're delicious. I love the fact that you can ask for anchovies on the side or not. Mm-hmm. I'm absolutely a huge fan, and I love the history behind it. I had no idea this was invented by an Italian in Mexico, and we're at 100 years.
Yeah, now I feel like it's such a thing, like every restaurant, it's hard to find a restaurant that doesn't have a Caesar salad on its menu. And a lot of Northeast Ohio restaurants too, they'll do different things. I know Opal on Pearl, they'll do a grilled Caesar where they grill the romaine first. Don's Pomeroy House in Strongsville, they have a great crab Caesar salad that's a bit more of a full meal than the traditional version. I like at Sense Pizza, they have a kale Caesar, which is non-traditional, but still kind of the same thing with breadcrumbs, like toasted breadcrumbs instead of croutons. So there's like literally a million Caesar salads to try in Northeast Ohio.
And you know, it's interesting because it's also, when I order a salad that's not a Caesar, I always get the dressing on the side. I don't like my salads.
Yeah.
This is the only salad that I like pre-dressed.
I think I'm the same with that too, and I didn't realize it. Yeah.
And the other thing I would add is that, unfortunately, I love the tableside presentations at a really good restaurant, really nice restaurant. You get tableside preparation. There's theater to that I really like. But unfortunately, COVID kind of sort of put an end to that. I know Lanning's used to do that. It was really a famous thing there. Now they will just put out, some salad fixings, you help yourself type of thing.
Yeah.
Which is fine. And I understand why they had to do it. We all have to evolve because of, everything because of the pandemic. So we've missed that. But yeah, great offerings in there. I mean, it really is a delicious dish.
Yeah, no, and it's one of those things I feel like we don't think about all the time, but everyone kind of eats all the time when it's like, oh, let's take a second and think about this,
Absolutely. All the more reason to do a story.
Yeah. So maybe some more exciting news if people think beer's more exciting than salad. Royal Docks Brewery, there is some changes going on behind the scenes, a new location opening up. So what can you tell us?
So Royal Docks Brewing Company started in Canton less than 10 years ago, doing a great job. They expanded slow and smart. They have a total of 3 locations, 2 in Canton, 1 in Massillon. And they announced in within the past year or so that they are going to expand to their first Cuyahoga County location in the Hingetown location, so Ohio City, over on Detroit Avenue. And things are going well. And then out of the blue, we find out that local investors are taking it over. It's a really good deal for both sides. It was interesting because the investment group is led by a local entrepreneur businessman named Andrew Gold, who he went to Green High School. He went to the University of Akron. He's a sharp business guy. It turns out that one of the landlords for Royal Docks had done some business with Andrew and said, you know what, you guys should maybe connect. I mean, this happens a lot. It's basically a form of networking. They started talking. They got along really well, the owners of Royal Docks and Andrew Gold and his team. One thing led to another. They took an investment stake in this, and they're basically forging a path for the future for the brewery. Now, the reason why the deal is such a big thing now is because we're seeing a little bit of a shakeup in the craft brewing industry, especially local. You're seeing contractions. We saw Lock 15 get taken over by Brew Kettle. So Brew Kettle is being very bullish. They're out there buying. Terrestrial is in bankruptcy protection right now. Arche closed. But now you're seeing kind of a looking ahead futuristic point here. And the big takeaway here is I talked to David Satula and Andrew Gould about this, but they're going to use the Hingetown location as kind of a launching point for any other future projects and the way they run the businesses in Canton and Massillon. So what that means is Andrew's team is going to come in and kind of offer ways to be efficiently streamline their operations. They're also moving to more of a pub model rather than distribution. So this is a smart thing because what they want is, people want to go out and buy a 4-pack or a 6-pack or a 12-pack, and that's great. But they also want that over-the-counter service with people, and that's really important. This is important because when you go into a grocery store right now, there are so many options, and beer drinkers are very interesting because the people who buy the pedestrian lagers like Bud or Miller, like they buy the same brand week after week. But people who buy craft beers, they're not buying the same brand every week. They're loyal to craft. So one week they may buy Royal Docks, the next week they may buy Great Lakes, the next week they may buy Fatheads. They keep rotating around. But we've all seen, you walk in and there's just so many offerings on these shelves. So this is the approach that these guys are taking. I think it's a smart approach. They have what they call Operation Beacon. Yeah. This is they're basically a 12-month plan of how to keep growing the brand, how to be as efficient as possible. I really like the fact that these guys see this as Satula told me, this is a win-win situation for the brewery.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we talk about all the time too with bars and restaurants and breweries, but it's a hard business in general. It's always, especially like you said with breweries, it's always evolving. There's so many now in Ohio, and it's kind of like you have to always kind of be thinking ahead if you want to survive even. So I think it's really smart for them, and I think it'll be interesting to see this whole transition and how it's almost like they're reintroducing themselves, but with a little spin on it, especially to the Cuyahoga County folks, who might not be as familiar with them.
That's exactly right. And it's funny because we talked about Blossom, and one of my favorite beers to take is called Backyard Crusher, which is a low alcohol, tasty, flavorful beer that is just a wonderful summertime sipper from Royal Docks. And that's exactly right. I mean, the beer industry has changed. I give brewers and breweries a lot of credit. I think they're smart business people. They are evolving. There's a lot of younger people who are in this business, and they understand, you can't just keep making the same thing and expecting the same results over and over. You have to offer some different things. That's important. I think when hard seltzers hit the market, they started not only serving them, but really just making them.
Yeah.
They learned how to make them. That's important. We talked about non-alcoholic beers. That's another option. You're seeing more and more of this, and we're going to continue to see all of this as a trend, for lack of a better word, because I think other businesses could take a page out of brewery ownership and how they're working. They're also, even though it's a competition, they get along very well. Many of them do. I hear that from a lot of brewers. I've heard that for 10 years.
Yeah.
So it's kind of good to see. But I think this deal is a good thing. I think it preserves the future of Royal Docks, and it'll be interesting to see them moving forward.
Yeah, I'm excited to check out the new location because it's going where North High was. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's like a perfect. I liked going to North High because it's a good brewery location over there. So that'll be a nice transition to Royal Docks for sure. Thanks so much for listening to or watching Dine Drink CLE the podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram @DineDrinkCLE, and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter at cleveland.com/newsletters.